Well, thank you. I'm going to turn my speaker off here. Thank you so much, Kenshin and Sona, for actually inviting me to speak to this group today. It is really quite an honor. If anybody's read the book Lie Spotting, you'll notice that one of the key things of spotting lies is when somebody looks up to the right and up. I'm not lying, I'm referring to my notes. So don't worry about that. I hope that it wasn't a little bit of fake news in the billing for this presentation, because it said that I was going to offer you strategic ways to adapt so that your business can be a success. Really what I'm going to do this evening is really just share some of my business thoughts and my experience from a company that turned 40 in November of 2020. And as Sona said, I also have my own company, Breland Holdings, and it's really just my investment vehicle. And I tell people it's my placeholder till I figure out what I'm really going to do when I grow up. I'm not sure if everybody who's on this presentation is aware of what Janie Welding Limited Partnership is all about. So I've built a little bit of a video into my presentation. It's a video that we put together back in 2019 for our celebration of excellence and our leadership transition. So Sona, if you could start that for me, please. Nope, we're not getting sound on it. And you're on mute, Sona.
Oh, sorry, my apologies. That's totally my fault. I'm going to share again. I forgot to click on the sound. There we go. I'm just going to go back to the presentation. Oh my goodness. What a terrible facilitator. There we go. All right.
Janie has evolved into one of Western Canada's largest custom industrial steel fabricators.
The changing products and the lack of repetition here at Janie keeps me coming back every day.
We build some of the most complicated, large, single-piece fabrications that you might see rolling down the highways of Saskatchewan or Alberta.
There's a tremendous amount of skill out there for the industry and the trade that we have here simply because of the types of fabrications that we do.
These people are the cornerstone of what builds this business. These people ensure that we deliver excellence every single day.
There's been tremendous opportunities for personal growth here at Janie since I started. I started here as a fabricator, and I wanted to challenge myself and get involved in project management, and Jim was open to providing those opportunities.
The one thing that is important, in my opinion, is to make sure that you do whatever you can, that everybody comes to work happy.
If you look back over the almost 39 years, there were many different defining moments that helped direct us and help build the character. We have a vision statement that really reflects the feeling of all the people that work here.
It's like one big family. I'm very comfortable here. Everybody gets along really well. Most of the people I know here work really hard, and we're all sort of focused on the same thing.
With a man like Jim, he'll walk through the shop and he'll talk to anybody, anytime. He's got the time for all of us.
Biggest things about Jim that I've appreciated was his honesty and his ability to maintain a calm composure regardless of what's happening around the shop.
He's always put his people first. He's focused on the culture.
It's about the next evolution of the company, the next team coming in that will actually take this company and grow it.
We've built some tremendous depth within our organization. A big part of that is going to be through the leadership of Adam Logue.
I've worked with Adam quite a bit on the floor, I think he's a very capable man. He's grown over the years just like the rest of us, and I believe he's the man for the job.
I think Adam's going to do really well in that position, and I support him 100%.
I think it's opportunity. It's opportunity for everybody in this company to experience more growth and more learning.
I do want to see us grow further and really solidify our place as Saskatchewan's premier custom fabricator. I want to thank Jim and Brenda for their leadership, their mentorship, their confidence in me, and most of all, their friendship.
Considering we live and work in a province, in a country that has what the rest of the world needs in our natural resources, and that is our customer base, I truly believe for our people, for J&E, for our partners, the best is yet to come.
Fabulous, thank you. I'm not sure if everybody has noticed, but Jim Nowakowski, the founder of J&E, is actually in the Zoom room tonight. So you'll have an opportunity to address questions to him. And if you want to put those in the chat or you want to ask him later and there's time, please feel free to do that. I was telling Kanchan and Sona that they're getting 2 Nowakowskis tonight for the price of 1. So that's pretty good. Although I did tell Jim earlier today that I thought he was joining just so he could make sure I wasn't making up too much stuff as I went along, because he knows I have a habit of that. So a little bit more about myself. As Sona said, I'm a minority partner of J&E Welding Limited Partnership, and I still am. I sit on a steering committee for a capital campaign with South Pauli right now. I am in my final year of the Ernst Young Entrepreneur as a regional judge for the Ernst Young Entrepreneur of the Year program. I'm the administrative chair for our parish council. I just finished my term as past chair for the national board of the Huntington Society of Canada. And I also sit as on the labor committee for the NSBA. I have a real hard time sitting still, if you haven't noticed, and Jim can certainly vouch for that. And this year of COVID has been really, really challenging for me, especially as my first year of rewirement. I stepped down from my position in September of 2019, so it really is sort of finding my way in this place of quiet and being away from that work environment that I was in for so long. I'd really like to start out, if I could, with having everybody just introduce yourself. You'll need to unmute. If you could tell me your name, if you could tell me the name of your company, and if you'd like to share one expectation you might have from tonight's presentation. Whoever'd like to start.
Hi, my name is, can you hear me? Okay. My name is Malvina, and my company is Cultural Bridges. And an expectation for tonight, really, I just wanted to just learn. I really didn't have any expectations. I was just excited about you as a speaker and just wanted to hear what you had to say. So, thanks.
My name is Roncy. My business is Sandy Shores Resort and Marina, and I also have Canarid Bagpipes. My expectation tonight, just always really happy to see someone like Brenda speak. So I'm here because of your work in the community and in the organizations is just so top notch. To listen to you, Brenda, is always an opportunity not to be missed. Thanks.
Thank you.
So I'll go. Hi everyone, my name is Elizabeth Shee and I have Storytelling Communications in Saskatoon, and I just love stories about resilience and adaptation, so anything I can learn about that will be fabulous.
Hi, I'm Megan Kent and I'm from Little Ox Film Company, and one thing I'd love to hear about tonight is just how, when you're looking to make a change or when you're looking to adapt, how you go through the decision-making process to figure out when to do the things. So that's what I'm interested in.
I'm Monica Kruger with Global Infocurs, and I certainly try to support Rajmanik mentorship program as much as possible. But also, I just love to hear from you, Brenda, and the great lessons you always have to share.
Hi, I'm Imad. Hi, I'm Imad. I'm the owner of Jumi's Traders Exports and Imports Corporation. I'm here to learn the new adaptability and marketing strategies, sales strategies, which need to be adopted in these kind of present conditions. Thank you.
I guess I'll talk next. Of course, I can't miss anything with Brenda, and now, yeah, Jim being on there. So it's fantastic to see us both, and wouldn't miss this for a world. Yep.
I'm Kurt Genoway with Hometown Electric and Hometown Homes, and just joining this just to always learn something, get as much information we can to always move forward and stuff. And this is my son Weston. Anyway.
Hi, I don't know if you can hear me. I'm Mario, General Manager of Prestige Lock and Door. And look, a connection, Jim's actually my mentor through Rajmanik Foundation. And I'm kind of excited. I've spoken to Brenda a few times, and definitely very valuable input, and looking forward to learning more about resilience, adaptability, and growth.
Hey everyone, my name is Mike. Sorry, I can't jump on video right now. I'm with YXE Real Estate Group, so real estate investing. And my expectation is just to learn how other businesses are adapting kind of in times of change like we're in.
Okay, we've got a couple more if you want to jump on, and if you're not comfortable with that, that's fine. Got a Curtis and a Kate.
Hi guys, sorry, yes, I cannot turn on my video on the phone. So my name is Kate. Yeah, I'm from Women's Business Hub, and I'm just a beginner in establishing my new business. It's an online English school which called Brace-K. We established it in Turkey, in Ukraine, and as well as in Canada. So I think it will be a great opportunity for me to learn a lot of new things, because I'm just a newbie here, and you're guys very professional people. So I think that's amazing that you do this. Thank you so much.
Curtis is being shy.
Well, in that case, I'll speak.
Everybody knows who you are,
I'm
don't
Jim,
they?
and I'm Brenda's husband, and I'm always excited to hear what she has to say. And I haven't had a chance to hear the presentation yet. So like everyone else, I'm very much looking forward to it.
Well, thank you everyone for introducing yourselves. It's always nice to hear who's in the room. I heard a few expectations. I'm not sure that my presentation will meet all of your expectations. I'm not really going to talk too much about sales strategies tonight. Great questions question in terms of when do you pull the trigger? When do you make a change? When do you start adapting? I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to answer that question in the presentation tonight, but I'm certainly open to a one-on-one conversation after this, or we can exchange emails, those types of things. So don't be afraid to reach out to me. Sonar Cantrin can give you information. You can reach out to me after, and we can have some more conversation about it. So my topic tonight is adaptability versus extinction. And I really want to explore three areas of that through the lens of my time in business and my time with J&E. And those three lenses are the speed of change, creating a nimble culture, And I thought this was kind of fun. Nothing lasts forever, so what's next? I'm not going to be teaching you any brand new system or magic formula that's going to ensure that your business stands the test of time, however you measure that in today's terms. The most important thing that I want you to leave here tonight really is with a heightened curiosity for knowledge and learning. And I'm really going to challenge that in you tonight. I might actually be giving you more questions than I give you answers. If you can change the slide for me, please, Sona. And sorry for the whole technology thing. Sona's running this because I'm old and I can't figure all this stuff out. So I found this slide. I loved it. I found this when I was putting my notes together, and I'm not sure about any of you, but I have absolutely felt this way some days, and certainly in the last 12 months of COVID. If you can read that, it says, I'm beat. Can we just make money today and disrupt some other time? And I'm sure you're feeling some of that right now during the pandemic. Next, please, Sona. I said that I wanted you to go away more curious today. So I want to do a little exercise. And this is something that I took part in a tech conference a couple of years ago. And you may have too, but it's a really good mind expansion exercise. I want you to think about autonomous vehicles for a moment. And I want you to think about the industries that they are either disrupting or will disrupt in the future. And if you can see, there's a couple of different design models on your screen. There's one up on the left, and it shows people coming out the back of it. And it's a little bit hard to see, but there's nice, comfortable benches inside of it. The one on the upper right shows the driver, well, not really a driver, occupant, I guess, reading, maybe perhaps even studying. And the model on the bottom, it shows really nice, comfortable swivel seats and really big interactive entertainment screens. So when you're thinking about autonomous vehicles, I want you to write down, so I'm going to make it work a little bit here again. I'd like you to write down one industry that you believe autonomous vehicles, AVs, are either disrupting or will disrupt. And I know you might have a whole list of them, but I only want you to think of one. And I'm actually going to ask you to share your thought with everybody if you can. Sonia, you can stay back on that other slide. I don't know if you can back up. Okay, I'm not sure if everybody's got their industry written down, but just quickly take yourself off mute and quickly share the industry that you believe AVs are either disrupting already or they're going to disrupt in the future.
Trucking.
Hotels.
Pardon me? Hotels?
Mm-hmm.
Great one. Another one?
Auto industry.
Auto body repair.
Trucking.
Taxis.
Taxis.
Design development.
Okay.
Research development on design.
Mm-hmm.
Driving schools.
Schools, good one. Anything else?
Parking.
Parking.
Parking. Yep.
Road infrastructure.
Good one.
I think the airplane, air travel, especially if it's easy to cross borders, you can just drive for endless hours without with being productive and not having to fly to places. So.
Okay, I'm not going to spend a whole bunch more time in it, but those are all great answers. And look at all of the industries we think about when we think about that. Now, I heard most of these at that presentation a couple of years ago, but there's a couple that I didn't hear tonight that I heard then and I went, what? Tourism. How we consume content in terms of tourism. What about hospitals? What about insurance? We think about hospitals. I mean, there's a lot of car accidents. If AVs are really on their game, we might not have the same need for the level of healthcare that we do now and the same response in hospitals. So you think about these things, there's there's a lot of industries that AVs either are touching right now or have the potential to touch. So it's really good to think about that adaptability. And I want you to go back to some of the things that people shared and think, did you hear something different than what you were thinking of when I asked that question? Did you even hear an industry or a disruption that might actually change or provide opportunities to the industry that you're in, or make you think about your adaptability in terms of how you may have to change in order to compete? That's really what that exercise is about, is to say, expand your mind. These things are going to touch a lot of stuff, and is there opportunity in your industry for that? So the next slide that Sona's got up, this is a little bit more food for thought. And this was an article I found, Frances Noki of the Total Entrepreneur put this out, and she said there's 10 industries that are likely to face extinction in the next decade. And some of these are no-brainers, I think, when we look at them, and some of them made me go, what? Crop dusting. Well, if we do it, it will likely be done by drone. It's not going to be done by people in airplanes anymore. And when you think about the change in technology in the ag industry, it's absolutely amazing. I mean, they're doing soil sampling on the fly. They're telling you what you need, where in the field at any given time. Just last week, there was an announcement of the Opal Lab opening at the University of Saskatchewan. So, I mean, this stuff is changing all the time. This one, I went, what? Gay bars. Not because we won't have LGBTQ people, but because diversity will become so mainstream that we don't have to have those spaces. Newspapers, I mean, we're already seeing that. Payphones. I don't know when the last time was that I saw a payphone, except maybe in pictures that Jim's brother has sent from London. They still have the nice red payphone boxes. Coin-operated arcades. Think about what's happening with casinos. Money, actual coin, and paper. And I wonder even, is COVID going to hasten that demise? How many of us have been told, don't bring money? It's all cards now. They want tap. They don't want the paper and coin. Camera stores. So, I mean, we all carry our cameras, right? We don't need to carry cameras around our neck anymore. I mean, the actual photographers, but these are becoming so much more mainstream. Cable TV, well, cable TV, that's a no-brainer. It's already being replaced by Netflix and Prime and Apple TV and a whole host of other things. Computers. I thought that was a little bit strange too, but again, our smartphones and our devices are becoming our computers. We don't need to sit in front of all of this setup anymore, that they can connect to any device that we may want to use, view, interface with at this time. Piggy banks. I thought, well, okay, there's an interesting one on the list, but if we're getting rid of coin, I guess we don't have a need for piggy banks at this point. So I thought this was an interesting list to think about when we think about extinction of business. And I have to confess right now that I've probably become that old person, the one that says, I had to walk 3 blocks to school on level ground both ways. I'm not sure how many people here are old enough to actually get the change of humor from perhaps your grandparents' generation of the 3 miles uphill both ways. But I do want you to think about education for a minute and think about the change of the delivery platform of education just over the last 5 years even. I can get a degree from any English-speaking university in the world without ever leaving my chair at home. And I say English-speaking because I haven't mastered Google Translate yet. Now think about the change in the delivery of education just since March of 2020. Homeschool has taken on a whole new meaning. I don't think we've eliminated the need for higher learning institutions for things like the sciences and maybe medicine, and maybe even the trade that I'm more familiar with in welding. But think about how much less real estate these institutions are going to need as a result of these virtual learning environments. And then there's another question in terms of a pro and con, opportunities and maybe challenges. Is there a positive or negative mental health impact on individuals as we transition into these virtual learning environments and even our virtual work environments? I told you I'd have more questions than answers here. Next slide, please, Sona. I found this slide too when I was making my notes, and I thought it was pretty funny, but I went, oh my gosh, it's so true. Social media platforms are capturing our brains, literally, and science and neurology is showing this, and it is showing up in the classroom, in our work environments, everything that we're interfacing. I loved it, theme paper, what did I do this summer? And don't just send me the link to your social media site. We're seeing it. Next slide, please. So the Internet of Things may have prompted you to start your business, but if it didn't, the Internet of Things and big data are absolutely impacting and disrupting your business, your marketing, and your speed of obsolescence. Everyone is trying to increase their clock speed these days in business, or they should be. And what do I mean by clock speed? Well, clock speed refers to execution speed, for example, time to market, and the corresponding value of change. Clock speed was actually a term that was coined by Charles Fine, an MIT professor, to define rapidly evolving industries. He argued that in business today, all advantage is temporary. In order to survive, let alone thrive, companies must be able to anticipate and adapt to change or face rapid, brutal extinction. You think I come from the dark side? Look where this guy comes from. Studies suggest that clock speed has increased 3, 4, and even 5 times in the last decade, and our change cycles are being compressed by the same factor. A great example actually is the COVID vaccine. If you want to stop sharing the screen for a moment, you certainly can. A great example is the COVID vaccine, and I don't want to get into an efficacy discussion around vaccine, but typically it would be between 5 and 10 years and about $500 million to bring a vaccine to market. We've had a bit of a jumping on point on this one because the world has had coronaviruses before, and there's been intense pressure on global sharing of knowledge and development. But we did get to a vaccine, and not just one vaccine, in under 12 months. And those first pharma companies to market are already projecting billions in revenue. So how does this relate to my experience? I think about J&E's focus on clock speed, and you probably think I'm going to talk about welding, and I will, but I'm going to talk first about something that's familiar to all of us in terms of business. I'm going to talk about financial reporting processes. We started to use our technology a little bit differently, and we developed processes that allowed us to contract our financial reporting from 25 days post-month end to 8 or less days post-month end. We have a little bit more complex. You saw some of those great big huge vessels and some of the things that we do. We have a little bit more complex system of having to value our work in process. So while that's maybe not as impressive as companies that can report live or report within 24 to 48 hours, it was a pretty big change for us to come into that time frame and to do it. We did it in under a year, and we actually did it with fewer people. It was utilizing our technology, looking at it differently. We also, we're under, when we changed some ownership in the company, we're also under an auditing requirement called IFRS, and it's a lot more onerous audit process. Well, we actually brought our IFRS audit in draft form, ready to show to our board within 4 weeks of our year end. And that's really, really quite impressive. And again, it's about using technology, being smarter around technology. We also essentially walked every part of our collection and reporting process. We started acting like 2-year-olds. At least I started acting like a 2-year-old. And you know how what they do? They ask a lot of whys. Why are we doing? What do we, all of this, it's whys. And so we were walking our process through that lens of that why. But if you have anyone, and this is for everybody in business, if you have anyone in your processes that are really entrenched in yesterday's thinking, this can be a really tough shift to start moving and changing processes for people. That was a tough one for us. There was a lot of communication around that. But my team learned pretty quickly that their responses like, because we've always done it this way, or a response like, because you told us to do it this way, that wasn't going to fly very long. They had to understand, they had to trust that they could even ask me why wherever I plugged into the process. And sometimes me just getting really curious about my why or having to explain my why could actually shift even my thinking about where I was in it and what we were doing. So I think about financial reporting and people go, big deal, right? Financial reporting is really that historical, it's rear view mirror stuff. How does that help us get faster? But I have to tell you that when we got really fast with good, accurate financial reporting, it can actually help you spot things that are developing in your company. It can help you spot trends much faster and allow you to report on those things and allow you to be able to adapt and react. And fast and accurate financial reporting for us really helped build very, very strong relationships with external stakeholders for us, like our financial institutions. We got, I mean, Jim can talk about that later, but we had wonderful, we actually had banks competing for our business because they knew they were going to have some fast response and accurate information from us. So in addition to faster reporting, we actually designed and implemented a dashboard of information as well. And it incorporated some of that historical financial information, but we also tied into it things that we felt were leading indicators in our industry. And we measured a lot of things, and these things changed over time depending on the value and the reliability and really the effort of collecting the data. And there's lots of programs, and we had lots of phone calls. There's lots of programs and software out there that can actually help you interface with most systems today, and it can actually help you develop those dashboards. We built ours in-house because we have some really, really geeky people and geeky detailers that love programming. So we did some of that stuff in-house. But I have to tell you that those dashboards, they were pretty interesting to look at. We looked at employee statistics, we looked at attendance statistics, we looked at estimating statistics, we looked at a lot of data that would help us say what's happening today, but what might this be showing us about tomorrow that was really important. And in some cases, you almost have to be a little bit of a scientist in this, and you have to develop a hypothesis. And for instance, on the dashboard and on some of our reporting, one of the hypotheses that we did have was that our estimating data actually had leading indicator information on our utilization. So how does that work, right? You're asked to estimate, how can that tell you about future outlook? Well, I mean, if you're making pencils, maybe it's a lot easier. We are doing fabrications, and some of these fabrications that can take months and months and months in terms of engineering and planning and production. So how the heck is this possibly going to be a leading indicator? Well, we collected a lot of information that we collected on when the bids were coming in, what industries were they coming from, what resources, what building might we even have to use for them. What we were hoping to find in the data was a leading indicator that would actually tell us when we could move our bid rates up or when we had to move them down, because it was a bit of a projection for us on what our future might look like. No guarantees, but what our future might look like. And I have to tell you, we actually did find a pretty good leading indicator in all of that data when we were graphing those utilizations that actually allowed us to have some of that movement in our pricing. We had to really change our way of thinking about a lot of different things as well. We started measuring a lot of things that we hadn't before, and we don't get much at Janie. We didn't get much of an opportunity to do production work, and that's probably true of a lot of companies that are represented here tonight. It's not like you get to do 100 of the same thing. Well, Mario, you might get to cut a bunch of keys, but you don't get to do the same thing over and over. So you develop that sort of, you know, that skill where you don't have to think about it. You can just turn it off. We didn't have that opportunity. We had some opportunity when we were doing production runs of power poles, and sometimes even when we had a run of 3 really massive vessels, and you'll get a picture of that later, but 3 really massive vessels. But we measured in those opportunities. We measured things like arc on time, and that's the time that, you know, the welder has his helmet down and he's actually laying a bead. That's a really small percentage of our manufacturing time. And so in addition to that, then we said, well, okay, well, what else can we do here in terms of increasing that, you know, that clock speed? How do we get faster? So we brought a whole cross section of our people together, and we studied a system called velocity scheduling. And that was a real eye opener for us as well. That was a change in thinking about our work in process. It was a change in thinking on downtime. We were always trying to reduce downtime. This system was counterintuitive to that. It's saying you actually want to open up as much downtime as you can, because that becomes your opportunity time. And we had to come up with different measures of throughput. So I'm throwing a lot of manufacturing jargon here, but really what I'm saying ultimately is it's important to measure. It's important to determine those things that are relevant to your organization, and what can you measure that makes sense and will actually inform you about something that's important, that will increase that clock speed and competitiveness. At one time, Janie was about 170 plus people generating in the neighborhood of 25 to $30 million on an annual basis. Today, there is about 150 or less people, and they're generating about 40 plus million. And that isn't because we've had the opportunity to have really great price increases. If anything, there's been downward pressure on our pricing because of competitiveness, and also because some of our typical markets have contracted. You think about potash, and they pulled back in, and oil and gas pulled back in, and uranium pulled back in. So we really, really had to sharpen the saw. We really had to look at those processes and say, you know, where can we get this traction? How can we make it make sense? And we really didn't have the opportunity to incorporate much in the way of robotics. Again, when we're a custom shop, one-odds, you really don't have an opportunity to do a lot of that from that engineering design and build perspective. But we did add automation or semi-automation where we could and where it made financial sense. So it wasn't just, hey, let's go buy a robot, this is great. Every time we made those kinds of major capital decisions, we absolutely went through a business case exercise. It was looking at the financials, and we could look at it because we had measured. What was our time? How was this going to improve time? What was this actually going to add? And you drill those kinds of things down into the numbers. Monica can speak a whole lot probably more to that too, even just through practice in the school and some of the things you look at from a business perspective. But that really, we had to be on our game in that area. So in the production process, again, we measured processes. I've said that. What we learned is we learned how to start our projects better. So it wasn't just get faster at what you're doing. We learned how to start our projects faster. We learned how to better stage and kit our materials. Have stuff ready, have it there in smaller chunks, have it right there where the welder needs to start. He doesn't have to roam around looking for it. And some of those are concepts of lean, but we really got sharp in that space. We developed a lot of fixtures that would help us develop and build a lot of fixtures that would actually help us reduce our handling time. And we invested capital in vertical integration. And we added a processing and a heat treating facility, because those are the places when we measured that we saw our greatest bottlenecks. And we knew that we were having to wait for outside vendors in those spaces. So we were competing with other people on their pricing, their timing, those types of things. So again, we came back to a business case in those scenarios and said, what makes sense? Do the numbers make sense? Do we have enough work? I mean, this is risky stuff, right? Your gut's got to inform you, the numbers have got to inform you, but it's to not be afraid, to be curious about always looking at those things and again, measuring them. Sona, if you want to share the screen to slide 9, please. Perfect, thank you. We also chunked our massive projects down into smaller pieces. We set objectives, as I've said, we measured our output, we removed obstacles, and we moved people. We used our software systems differently than we had in the past, so technology in our build strategy, and we played with cutouts. You can see that on the screen here. We played with cutouts on a whiteboard. We only have so much fabrication facility, so only so much real estate and only so much crane capacity. So it really was to get intentional about how do we move pieces around? What is the sequence of things? How do you stage this so you can actually put 3 massive vessels like this out of our building? And we did build 3 of these. We built them in just over a year. There's really complex internals on this, on these vessels. If you look the size of our people that are there and the size of these vessels, they're about the height of an 11-story building, and they're about the equivalent weight of 6 737 jetliners. And we built 3 of them here in Saskatoon and sent them into Alberta, as a matter of fact. But again, it was to get intentional. It's about that other side. How do we move pieces? Talking to our people. What makes sense? How do we get them structured so we can actually come out, measure, measure, measure? And I said that we collect a lot of data as well. Well, we didn't make these changes overnight, and we didn't make them all at once, and it absolutely wasn't easy, but it was about continuous improvement. And continuous improvement is a core value. You'll see that in a bit too. It's actually a core value of Janie. So it was really about living our values and actually walking that space of the values. And as I said, we collect data, and that sounds a lot more high tech than what it is. We did a lot of data entry instead of data capture. We didn't move into some of those technology areas. Again, we did some business case on it, a little bit harder in some of our facilities and how much we had to move items like this around and people around. But we tried to ensure that we collect meaningful data. And some of that was a bit of a trial and error process, because what you're collecting today might be a waste of time tomorrow, complete waste of time. And you need to recognize that. And you need to recognize when you should stop collecting or change the data that you're collecting. Never stop questioning the value of a process, and that includes data collection. Next slide, please, Sona. The promise that software is eating our world is actually now a well-founded reality, and every organization is becoming a digital organization. Even an industrial fabrication company like J&E is becoming a digital organization. And what's behind this? Well, I did a little research again, and Simon Parmet of MuleSoft suggests that the first reason is competitive pressure. The competition is now coming from absolutely everywhere. J&E lost bids to companies in China for product delivery in Alberta and Saskatchewan. You saw what we do. Size and distance are no longer a barrier to entry. Your competition can be anywhere in the world. Parmet suggests the second reason that we're becoming digital organizations is that there are more tools that organizations can leverage in order to transform their business. So you think about some of the things that we have in the Internet of Things and software as a service, big data, social, mobile, all of those kinds of things. We absolutely have more channels that we can leverage. These technological drivers are forcing a dramatic acceleration in what a business can and should do to remain competitive and relevant. And I would suggest that probably everyone on this call tonight would say yes to that. And you're seeing how this digital transformation is impacting. Joan, I know we've talked in the past about how you're delivering HR and training, and it's all in remote now. It's all virtual environments. So you're having to learn how to use these tools. You're having to leverage these environments and these tools, and everyone. Mario, even you, I think about how much more in security systems now that you're getting that are digital. It's no longer just key and lock and what you're having to know and learn in your industry. So it's about that learning and how you stay competitive and how you adapt. Next, please. So no business is impervious to disruption, but the most important job that you have is to continually scan your business environment and to be able to, as much as possible, detect when change is coming and even where it might be coming from and how fast. At J&E, we used a hybrid of a couple of tools, and some of you may have seen lots of these in the past. We used a couple of different things. We did a hybrid of a SWOT. We also used a risk heat map, and we continually scanned our environment. I'm only showing you a very small snapshot of a threat section, and you'll notice that the items in this section are ranked according to impact and probability. And the higher the ranking, the more we focused on action plans, alternatives, and opportunities. This isn't just textbook stuff, people. This isn't the thing you go into a business management class and say, oh yeah, that was kind of fun, but now I'm just going to put my head down and work. This is real stuff, and you need to be thinking about the strategic planning in the running of your business so that you are adaptable. Next screen, please. An equally important exercise is to identify risk and to understand how to manage risk at the speed of change, or the risk clock speed. Essentially, it's how quickly one goes from the onset of a risk to the impact of a risk. Again, I'm only showing a very small section of a risk heat map we used a couple of years ago. We had several categories in our risk heat map. We had categories like operational, financial, strategic, and this is a piece of our compliance section of risk heat map. And you'll notice that there's a couple of different sections in here. Oh, and by the way, there's a ton of different ways to do this work. There's a ton of different ways to do risk mapping, to do SWOT, to do strategic work. I can only say that the most important thing is that you actually do the work. And don't try and, well, if you're one person show, you're going to do it by yourself or invite in some trusted professionals. But bring your people together. We brought our people together to the table. This wasn't me sitting in a room or Jim sitting in a room, shut the door, hey, I'm going to make this stuff up. It was really about our people having a good conversation to talk about current and future state and really to identify those risks. So in this one, you'll notice that there's a couple of different columns. We go back to severity and likelihood again, but there's also another important column on this, and that was reputational risk. And a significant impact to any company can be, or even I'd argue every leader these days, is damage to your reputation or brand. And what we tried to do in this is we said, okay, if we went wrong in this area, would it damage our reputation? And our reputation, that was a big piece of who J&E is reputation. So if we went wrong in a specific area, did it have a risk of actually damaging our reputation? So again, I go back, that's really important to think about these days, because every business, every leader can be impacted by damage to their reputation or brand. And there's lots of really amazing examples if you're watching the news these days. But one that sort of jumped to mind as I was putting my notes together in the last few days is Mike Lindell. Anybody familiar with that name? Anybody watching the news lately? Mike Lindell is the CEO of My Pillow. And so he's been in the news almost daily lately, and his product has now been pulled from the shelves of almost every major retailer. And why? It's not because he had a product failure. It's not because he had a poor product. It's because of his very vocal political views. So when you think about risks and change acceleration and adaptability, you really need to think too about those things. What's going to happen? Reputation. If my leader goes out and says something, if my employee, how many times have we seen this? My employee goes out and wears some crazy behind t-shirt. Is that going to damage my reputation? And sort of what are my plans behind that? How am I going to mitigate that, or what the cleanup might be? Unlike your cruising speed on the highway, you don't get to control the speed of change or disruption in your businesses or your industries and sectors. And not all disruption is a result of technology. You really have to have an awareness of opportunities and risks associated with disruption that's happening as a result of things like geopolitics. A good example of that is even the executive orders that the new President Biden, just in his first couple of days in office. Are you paying attention to what you're hearing coming through those channels? Think about global environmental policy and stewardship. And a great example of that is the Paris Climate Accord. Do you understand what some of these things are about and how they might actually impact your industry? And you might think you're so far down the chain that they don't, but there is a trickle-down effect to every industry. There is a trickle-down effect to every business. And you should be thinking about what some of those are. And even more important are some of the changes that are happening as a result in shifts in much-needed cultural norms. So things that are the change spurred on by things like the Me Too movement or Black Lives Matter. And what impact is that having? And I had a little bit of fun with the research on this one. If you want to go to the next slide, please, Sona. I've chosen 3 ad campaigns from 2018 that actually demonstrate how failing to scan the global environment can and does have consequences for corporate reputation. These campaigns likely cost the company's customers, maybe celebrity endorsements, but I would argue certainly marketing and maybe even legal cleanup fees. And I hope you can see the issues in all of this. The first one is an H&M product launch in the UK. And can you read the little guy's hoodie on this? This campaign went viral for all the wrong reasons. Coolest monkey in the jungle. How bad could their timing be on this with Black Lives Matter? The next one is a Kleenex ad campaign that was pulled pretty quickly after launching because of gender profiling. And what's really funny about this, and Jim actually brought this up to me, he said, you know, Kleenex had man-size Kleenex decades ago, and they dropped the product. So what made them think they should bring it back at a time when gender diversity is such a hot topic? Why did they feel they needed a gender type of product that was clearly not gender specific? And the third one is a Nivea Facebook campaign that was launched in the Middle East, and it quickly got significant backlash. That one should jump right out. Racial discrimination. White is purity. You can get into these spots if you don't have some kind of sense of what's going on in the world. You're not scanning your environment and the entire environment. You can get into trouble pretty quickly, and these big companies have demonstrated that. I'm going to wrap this section up by asking a lot of questions, and I want you to get curious about a few of these things. And I think that Kanchan and Sona are actually going to share this PowerPoint with you after, so you'll see these questions on there and you can think about them after. But Sona, could you change the screen for me, please? So wrapping up, the speed of change. Are you measuring? And if you're not, why not? What are you measuring? And unless it's some kind of regulatory measure, whatever you're measuring should provide you some kind of value. It should provide you a roadway to increasing your clock speed or your competitiveness, or you're wasting your time measuring. Are you investing in disruption? And that could be technology, it could be equipment, it could be people. Number 4, are you routinely investing in developing and reviewing your strategic plans? You've heard me harp on about this one. Your strategic plans and even your strategic outlook. And don't forget to include your people in these discussions. And if you don't have people, invite a trusted professional to the table, or your mentor. You've got some mentors in this room. Ask your mentor to come to the table when you're doing some of this work. They'll give you great input. Number 5, if you had to rate your business on a sliding scale of adaptability in times of change acceleration, where 10 is most nimble and responsive, where would you land? And highly capitalized business aren't likely to be 10s. But now I want you to think about ways that you could increase your adaptability, stretch your imagination. No idea is a silly one. Some may just be more realistic in the short term. What we challenge people to do is just throw their ideas out there. And if we thought maybe this wasn't the right time for them, we would actually put those ideas into a planning parking lot. But I'm going to put a challenge out there. And again, this is new stuff that's hitting the news just lately. This particular vision statement is, but what he's doing and what the world is doing is hitting the news. Does anybody remember what Elon Musk's vision for SpaceX was or is? Does anybody know? No? Is everyone going to sleep? Did everyone have a really big supper and they're having a nap on me now? Elon Musk said back in 2002 when he started SpaceX, he said, we will land people on Mars by 2025. Does that seem out there to you? In 2002, would that have seemed like, are you crazy, man? Throw that idea off the table. Well, as of this week, there are 3 spacecraft orbiting Mars. There's one from the United Emirates, there's one from China, and there's one from the US. And the US, exactly, Mario, and the US is actually going to land a rover on February 18th on Mars. So how far out there was Elon's mission or vision back in 2025? So think about that. There's no dumb ideas. Think adaptability. Get your people talking about these things. And number 6, and probably the most important right now with this timing, and I've heard that, you know, in places, what kind of disruption is happening in your business right now as a result of COVID? And I would challenge you to go one step farther in thinking about that. Is this disruption temporary, or is this disruption going to be permanent? And if either, how do you take advantage of the opportunities or mitigate some of the risks around this? And I'll give you a perfect example. And I've had business people talking in this space and heard conversations on this. Think about disruption now for those companies that have people working from home. J&E has a lot of people now working from home. Production people are in the shops, but most of the other office people are working from home. Is that going to be temporary, or is that going to be a permanent disruption to their business? I was talking to a gal from RBC, and she said they have 10,000 people now working from home. They've emptied offices out in Toronto, office towers, and that they're likely going to stay permanent. And I would suggest in this now, there's going to be absolutely a lasting, maybe permanent effects on commercial, and I would even argue residential real estate because of this. So think about those disruptions. What's happening because of COVID? Is it temporary? Is it permanent? Is it something I can take advantage of? People don't have to commute. They're, you know, whatever it is, get your mind percolating around some of those things. Next, please, Sona. You thought I was going to go on and never stop. It could be. Jim would tell you I can do it. Next, creating a nimble culture. And there's a saying that's been attributed to the late management guru, Peter Drucker, that culture eats strategy for breakfast. It implies that you can set whatever course you want for your business, but it will be your culture, what your people believe and how they behave that determines what gets lived out in the work. The leader in every organization sets the tone and lays the foundation for the organization's culture. And in Kouzes and Posner, I'm sure most people who've touched on any business leadership training, in Kouzes and Posner's internationally acclaimed bestseller, The Leadership Challenge, the first principle of leadership is model the way. Simply put, it says that it's the leader's responsibility to establish the principles concerning the way that people should be treated and the way that goals should be pursued. In other words, how we all act. So what does that mean? It means that you need to be very clear about your personal values and the organization's values so that people can see why you do what you do. We show our values every day in what we say and how we act, both on and off the job. When I started at J&E, the values weren't written down, but they were certainly communicated by Jim. We had a facilitator come in 2001, and this individual helped us craft our first formal code of conduct. We didn't do it again. We didn't just get leaders in a room and that's it. We got about 25% of our people in the organization from every corner, every department of the organization. And we spent a day talking about values and about how everybody was expected to act, how people were expected to act at J&E. So it wasn't top down. This was coming from our people. This was connecting to Jim's values, putting them on paper and percolating right through the organization. Next, please, Sona. You guys are going to feel like you're in some kind of whirlwind after this. I clipped this from J&E's Guide to Success, and it's hard to read, but really the most important thing to understand, and this is our values, they're really the most important thing to understand about this is these values are absolutely rooted in Jim's personal values, and the words were crafted by our J&E people. I'm just going to read the first paragraph on this because that's really, it still gives me goosebumps because this is where it starts for us. Our culture is built on a solid foundation of values. These guiding principles dictate our behavior and can help you, talking to the individual, help you understand the difference between right and wrong. Our core values, or what we consider J&E's unwavering guide, also help to ensure we remain on the right path to fulfillment of our goals. So we talk, we tell people, and they share that common goal with us. So I'd like to say that once we had this, that it was all smooth sailing, but I'd be lying. You really have to check yourself against these goals as individuals and certainly as leaders on a frequent basis to make sure that you're actually walking the talk, that you're living out these values. And there's 40 years of history at J&E. And while I'd like to say it's all been success, there's been some failures along the way. And generally, it was a failure of leadership at all levels. It was a failure to have the patience to hire slow. It was a failure to identify a problem and have a tough conversation. It was a failure sometimes to hold everyone to the same standard of conduct, whether you were a partner or you were a laborer. I do know, though, that we experienced far more success than we ever did setbacks. And it was really about getting clear in this value space and communicating and communicating. Next, please. Bunch of words on a screen. What I try to do with this is I really just tried to pull out things, words that were in our values, things that we do, things that are in our sort of employee forward facing information and materials that spoke culture and were really the backbone of it. But very early on, Jim understood the value and the importance of giving up control and ensuring people that had the resources, and authority to get things done. One of the things that you would often hear Jim tell other people about our culture, about a business, is he would say, you know, if you give people junk to work with, they're going to make junk with it. So it was really important for us in living out our values that we kept up to date by investing in training, that we kept up to date in making sure that people, they maybe didn't have the bleeding edge of technology and tools, but we maintained things. They had good equipment. They were using up to date, not the latest, but up to date equipment that made sense. We often would invite in specialists to talk about equipment and even product trends. We conducted lots of lunch and learns, so as many as our people as we could were exposed to learning opportunities to increase their understanding. We identified knowledge gaps and supported training to help our people be the best that they could be as individuals and the best they could be as team members. We not only support, and you're hearing me talk past, present, they're all mixed up to me. I'm still there, but I'm not there. It's just the strangest thing these days. We identify knowledge gaps and supported training. We not only supported apprenticeship training, we incentivized it. When and where possible, we promote from within. As a matter of fact, J&E's new CEO, the person that replaced Jim, started with J&E over 20 years ago as a fabricator. And Adam has had many, many hours of post-secondary education sponsored by J&E after that fact. And he's also been invited to participate in ownership. So training, growing, learning, growing with the organization. As I said, we invest in training, even in the downtimes and sometimes especially in the downtimes. We developed our bench strength by encouraging and supporting that training. And yes, people have asked, there's a risk. There's absolutely a risk of that person, of that individual taking that investment and shopping it to another employer. But the risk of not training was higher in our estimation. We actually have the highest percentage of dual certified tradespeople in welding and fabrication in the province of Saskatchewan, according to the apprenticeship board. And when I left, I'm going to be a proud mom here for a second. When I retired, a couple of our people still held the top marks in the province on trade exams. We trained, we invested, we trained, and we helped people connect to values. Communication was and still is a really high priority for us. Jim started a tradition of weekly shop talks about 10 years into the business. And he would personally address everyone and talk about projects that were ongoing and those that we were expecting to come in. These meetings morphed into celebrations of personal success for individuals, safety milestones, discussion of workloads, and even discussion of what was happening in the industry and our industry sectors. Jim talked about the good stuff, but he also developed trust by talking about the tough stuff. So when there might be a need for layoffs or work share, he was the first person in front of our people to talk about some of that tough stuff. Trust your people have to believe that you have their best interests at heart. And that is not a show or a game. That's really an investment in your company. Those shop talks have changed to monthly now from weekly, because we've got several different shops and shifts, but they still happen the first Monday of every month, even with a new CEO. We added newsletters that we send home to families. We upgraded that to e-news, and we started a practice of quarterly pulse surveys. And that's a really neat one. If you want to ask me about that one sometime, you can too. But we started quarterly pulse surveys instead of these great big long pages of surveys to people. We also got very intentional in our hiring and promotion practices. Our goal is to hire a disproportionate percentage of A-team players. We utilize tools like the DISC trimetrics, actually, that helps to uncover a person's behaviors and motivators. We hire and promote for skill, but more importantly, we hire and promote for fit. We talk about excellence. We revisited, rewrote, rebranded most of our employee-facing material. We don't have job descriptions, we have position guidelines, and we don't have an employee handbook. We have a guide to success. Our Janie kids actually submit pictures every year for a Janie safety calendar, and they include a little caption that says why it's important for us to keep their parents safe. So we involve the family as much as possible. We incorporated lean training and the principles of lean. We introduced, you heard me talk about velocity scheduling, and we had to help people give up their real estate, and that was a tough one. We have multiple shifts and shops, and our people became so ingrained in driving to and parking in their parking spot and putting their stuff in their locker and starting their workday in their shop. And that was a real tough one. We even had, I laughed about this one. We actually even had a person lock out their welding machine so nobody could change the settings. Bolt cutters solved that one pretty quick. But in order for us to improve our clock speed for continuous improvement, we absolutely need our expertise to be fluid. So we had to ask our people to be open to moving on a regular basis. And some were hesitant and some still are, but we've got, most of our people now have worked almost in every shop, I would say, and right across our shifts. And we actually even started a 3-day weekend shift. And there was a lot of people that applied for that. It's 3 days of 12s. So less than a 40, 3 days of 12s. And we had a lot of people apply for that. And actually a number of them were parents with young children. So it actually worked better for them. We couldn't have or wouldn't have gotten that buy-in without being intentional every single day about our culture and our values. I can't speak enough about that. We asked, you've heard me say this already, we asked a lot of why, or my favorite, help me understand questions. We had to get people comfortable with questioning every single process. What we did yesterday might not be what we do tomorrow even. Our people talk about production obstacles every day in huddle board meetings, and our leaders are tasked with removing those obstacles as much as possible and what's within their control. We created a continuous improvement committee who had the authority to accept suggestions for improvement, review them, and implement them within an approved spending level. They didn't have to kick these things up to management, but they did need to measure and report. Our culture of continuous improvement and of learning is part of Janie's DNA. It's built right into our code of conduct. It's built into our performance measurement systems, and it's built into our promotion and succession strategies. And I know that all of this communication and transparency has helped to create and sustain a nimble culture. People understand the why. They can connect to the values. It makes sense to them. And for the most part, they're ready to engage, rethink, change, move when we are. And sometimes they're even leading that change. Next, please, Sona. We brought about 1/3 of our people together again in 2018 to revisit and talk about our values. We ended up with a new vision statement, actually, and this is our people's vision of J&E and themselves. Globally, we are trusted. We deliver with pride. Bold, driving opportunities. Difference makers, influencing combined success for our people, our products, and our partners. Combined strength. This picture is actually taken from the front door of our main facility on Thatcher Avenue. Really proud of our people and how they feel about our company and about themselves. Next, please. So I'm going to wrap up this section. I've been rambling. I'm going to wrap up this section with some thoughts from Randy Pennington, a much smarter person than I am, about how to sustain a nimble culture. He suggested there are 7 things you could do to ensure that your culture stays nimble. Create continual awareness. And just about the time that you believe that you've sent every imaginable message possible about why it's important to stay nimble and adaptable, keep communicating. Cultivate the language. Words have meaning. The best cultures adopt a language of success rather than a failure. And J&E's language is really consistent around the word excellence and Jim's vision of win-win in combined strength. Leverage the legends and symbols. Create and share legends of performance that demonstrate the culture in action. If you've looked at any of J&E's social media, Facebook, our website, or YouTube channels, you can see that we absolutely celebrate the legends. Build and maintain the competencies. Don't just tell me to work faster. Give me the tools and resources so that I can. And you've heard me talk about the importance of investing in training and tools for people. Align structure, process, and procedure. These things create habit. Make sure that the habits you're creating support staying nimble rather than putting up obstacles to it. Actively assimilate and strengthen group membership. Hire for fit. Make sure that you're teaching your culture and your values in really good intentional onboarding processes. And make sure that you're willing to remove those individuals that aren't living your values, even if they're top performers. And we've had to do this on occasion. And finally, go first. The commitment that you want from your team is volunteered every single day. You earn it when you model the behavior and performance that you want. And this takes us right back to where I started this section about model the way. It's really up to you as a leader. Next one. We're getting there, people. We're almost done. So nothing lasts forever. So what's next? And unfortunately, if you thought I was going to give you a bit of a roadmap here, I don't have one. Again, I've got lots of questions. I can't tell you if and when COVID is going to be over. I can't tell you where the value of Bitcoin is going to land. I don't even understand Bitcoin, but from what I'm reading, Elon Musk must. J&E is actually still changing and adapting. They now have a highway road sign division, and I never saw that one coming. So they continue to adapt and change with the values and the culture that we have in place. More than anything, I really want to leave you with questions to reflect on the what's next. And I want to share some of the things that I'm doing or have done in some of these areas. So number one, how are you How are you creating and extracting value from your company? Given the speed of change, and you think about the turbulence of COVID, how are you actually creating and extracting value from your business? Is it your paycheck? Or are you actually creating some kind of building out of an EBITDA or some kind of market valuation for future sale? And tech companies are a whole different beast in this area, but you should be thinking about that value in your company. If you just bought yourself a job, just say, I bought myself a job and getting a paycheck. But it is about that. Where is this going? Strategic planning for you. 2, social media apps have created a product that's captured our brains. How are you utilizing these channels to promote your business? Does your strategic planning take this into consideration? And next, more important, are you actually doing strategic planning work and doing risk assessments? Janie, we did it. We did it on a continuous basis. I still do it. I still do strategic planning work for myself personally. I've got a 2021 outlook. I have my plans. I have my goals. I have my tasks for this year. So it's just something that stays out in front of me as a habit. Number 4, how are you staying tuned into your industry? Do you belong to any industry associations or groups? Are you watching the competition? So when you think about it, if anybody's been to a horse race, you think, what's the thing that they put on the thoroughbred's head before they stick it into that little stall and ring the bell for it to go? They put blinders on it. So they have a laser focus. They don't put blinders on the jockey, they put blinders on the horse. The jockey still has this awareness of everything that's happening around them and happening on the track. You need to think about where you're positioning yourself in looking at your competition. Are you just head down in the business, you're laser focused, you have the blinders on? Or are you that jockey that's actually scanning your environment, has an understanding of where your competition is on the track and what they're doing? Watch game day film, figure out what game day film is for you, because it is out there in some form for every company. Just figure out what that is and make sure that you're monitoring those channels. Number 5, how are you staying tuned into other industries in the world? Remember where we started in terms of the industries that AVs actually might be disrupting. What are your news sources that you're following, and are they credible ones? I attend a lot of events still. Even in my retirement and in this transition to virtual environments, I'm in a Zoom room with you guys tonight. I participate in other Rajmanic events. Chamber events, SRITA events, economic forums. I stay plugged into news and what's happening. I really look to try and understand, to hear what other thought leaders are having to say. It's important. Next slide, please. How are you promoting? Oh, went too far. Went too fast, Sona. How are you promoting a culture of curiosity and challenge? Do you act like this 2-year-old with lots of whys, even for the person in the mirror? How are you preparing yourself for change so you can actually help your employees to be adaptable and accepting of change? I actually still work with a really great business coach. She asks a ton of questions that really help challenge my thinking and my perspective at times. So I haven't stopped that process. I still work with a business coach. You've got mentors. Plug into them. Number 8, what are you doing or learning in order to build personal and team resilience, especially in this time of COVID? This stuff is real. You know, you're feeling it, I'm sure, as business owners and people, family members. You're feeling it. This stuff is real. And I know I've struggled with some days, especially in my, and I keep hearing me call it rewirement because I still can't believe I'm retired. So even in my rewirement, I'm still struggling with it. And leadership can absolutely be a lonely place at times. I'm really purposeful about building and feeding my resilience. I'm a member of a group called the Executive Boardroom, and that group has been a tremendous amount of support and learning for me. Jim and I actually work out by Zoom twice a week with a personal trainer. I walk, I mean, you'd never know it, right? I walk 4 or 5 times a week, 5 kilometers outside, even in the winter time. And even this year, I started a practice of meditation, and now I know why they call it a practice. but I'm really intentional about taking care of my mental, physical health and that resiliency, because it's so important when you're in business and you're in a business owner and you're challenging that. And I hear so often, I don't have the time. I can't make time. You need to make time or you're going to be in a bad place. Number 9, are you swimming, learning outside your lane? Could be personal or professional. What are you being curious about that isn't perhaps related to your industry or maybe not even related to work at all? This swimming outside your lane is really important for mental resilience and builds creativity muscles. I have to tell you that on my reading list for this year is Quantum Computing 101. I know nothing about it. I keep hearing about it and I'm curious. So I'm challenging myself outside of my traditional lane. And lastly, what books are you reading? Look at old school. You see books in the background, look at old school. You could be listening to them. It's all audio books these days. What books are you reading or are you listening to? I'm actually on my 7th so far in 2021. And my overall favorite in here, and I already talked to Sona about this last night, here's my must-read recommendation for you in 2021. It's a book called Range: Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World by David Epstein. And my favorite line, I want to read my favorite line for you. Compare yourself to yourself yesterday, not to younger people who aren't you. Everyone progresses at a different rate, so don't let anyone else make you feel behind. You probably don't even know exactly where you're going, so feeling behind doesn't help. So I've talked about the speed of change or disruption. I've talked about culture, and I hope that I've challenged your what's next. And I'm going to share one last quick story about my own personal journey and adaptability. I joined J&E back in about 1999 as a controller. And for anybody who knows me personally, you know how absolutely appropriate that title is. My adaptability, and thankfully, Jim, let me play in a lot of areas in the company. I was able to get into marketing, to branding, to HR, to quality management, and even safety. I'm not an expert in any of those areas. I'm a professional accountant. I'm not an expert in those areas, but my openness to learning to experiment actually helped me to encourage growth and change in adaptability in others and in the organization, in the business itself. So challenge your adaptability. I'm going to conclude. I'm really going to stop. I'm going to conclude with just a couple of thoughts. The skills required today, even for accountants, are vastly different than those required a decade ago. Never stop learning. The future is here already and belongs to the fastest decision makers. If you aren't moving yet at the same speed as technological advancement and in the same direction the world is going, you're already getting left behind or you're running out of business. Know that how you did it today isn't how you're going to do it tomorrow. And finally, business isn't for the faint of heart. Some experts are actually calling this the age of creative destruction. It's not so much that a business fails, as much as it is that the business owner or entrepreneur has failed to adapt and invite change. Become a nimble ninja. And next one, Sona, and this is just a little bit of fun. I started out showing you the list of companies that they're expecting will be extinct over the next decade. This is Francis again, Noki from Total Entrepreneur. These are the businesses they say are emerging over the next decade, and some of them are already here. Electrical recharging stations, well, that's a no-brainer with the rise of EVs. Drone delivery, it's already happening. Home sharing, and not just for vacation. That one kind of blew me away a little bit. Solar panel business. I don't know if anybody's seen it, but there's actually fashion hats now that have solar panels in them, so you can keep your devices charged on the go, like your phones. Crazy. Passenger drone business. Well, the first ever drone limo service actually started in 2017 by a Chinese drone engineering company, so it's already here. nanotechnology and Watson Health business. In 20 years, our lifespan is actually going to increase because of nanotechnology. We're already seeing an end to traditional medical services with the introduction of Watson, the hyper intelligence supercomputers. Robot rentals and repairs, no brainer. 3D printing and data crunching, already here, it'll just get stronger. And finally, ride dispatch software. When you think about it, how many apps do we have on our phones now for ride dispatch, taxi, all those kinds of things? They say the next 10 years will usher in an actual global model of ride dispatch software. So really interesting things to think about. And very last slide, Sona. Oh my gosh, I've really gone over my time, haven't I? I do talk too much. So I heard some expectations at the start of the presentation. I hope I've addressed a few of them. If nothing, I've challenged you to get curious, keep learning, be adaptable. And I'm going to let Peter Drucker close this one for me. I love these words. The greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence. It's to act with yesterday's logic. So thank you very much for listening as long as you did tonight. Thanks for joining. It was a pleasure to be here with you tonight. And if you've got time to hang around for a little bit, and Sona and Kanchan can answer a few questions. Jim, I'm sure, will answer questions if you have them.
I'm just taking a look. There is a lot of thanks. Everyone is just very appreciative of.
Oh, wow. I've talked enough that
I don't see too many questions unless anybody wants to unmute. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. Feel free to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask them. Otherwise, of course, feel free to email us. We can get your questions over to Brenda. I do see a couple of people who have shared their email addresses as well. So we'll get you Brenda's presentation by email as too. This is a great presentation. So glad to have challenging questions to reevaluate my business, says Elizabeth. So thank you. Thanks are just flowing through. So so that's most of what our chat is.
Well, thanks for all hanging in with me. I didn't think I was going to go quite that long, but I guess I talk a lot. So, but as I said, Sona, Kanchan, happy to interface with anybody after. If somebody wants to reach out and have a one-on-one conversation with me, you just shoot me contact information, and I'm more than happy to have a chat with people.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time, Brenda. It's been so valuable. Like Elizabeth says, it's been thought-provoking. And so I think a lot of people have a lot of things to think about tonight. So make sure you still get some sleep, though, that the brain doesn't keep churning that far. We have time to figure it out, but it gives us a lot of things to think about, both personally and professionally. So thank you for that, Brenda. We will be in touch about the next seminar. Keep your eyes peeled in your email for our March seminar and details for that. I remind you again of May 11th. This year we are, the Raj Manik Foundation is celebrating its 25th anniversary. It's unbelievable to think that it's been that long, but we're celebrating on May 11th at Prairieland Park. Of course, all safety rules and everything are being followed. And so it's going to be a great opportunity for us to get together, celebrate. There'll be networking through technology across rooms. We have the entire venue to ourselves. So if you think of that kind of space, we have lots of space to spread out. So hope to see everyone there. And again, thank you, Brenda, and thank you, Jim, as well. Appreciate all your time, and we'll see everyone very, very soon.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Yeah, everyone.
Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.